The first thing Jessica Nguyen noticed was the smell freshly ground coffee, sweet and earthy, drifting through the air as she stepped into Brew United's flagship Seattle store. The place was always bustling at 7 a.m., but today, she wasn't here as the CEO. Dressed in black jeans, a faded hoodie, and sneakers that had seen better days, she looked every bit the new part-time barista she was pretending to be. Her hair was tucked under a beanie, and a name tag that read, Jenny, was pinned to her chest. No one gave her a second glance. For Jessica, this was more than a disguise. It was a return to her roots. Years ago, before she built Brew United into a national chain, she'd worked behind the counter, learning the rhythms of a morning rush, the language of regulars, the art of a perfect cappuccino. But lately, something had shifted. Sales were down, reviews on Yelp and Google had soured, and rumors swirled about a toxic work culture. She'd read the reports, seen the numbers, but she needed to feel the truth for herself. Her first shift started with a crash course from Mike, the shift manager. He was in his late 30s, with a sharp jawline and a voice that carried across the room. "We move fast here, Jenny. Don't mess up the orders. And don't chat with customers too long. Got it?" His words were clipped, his eyes already scanning the room for problems. Jessica nodded, biting back a smile. She'd met 100 Mikes in her career, managers who measured success in seconds and cents, not smiles. As she tied her apron, she caught snippets of conversation from the other baristas. Elena, a college sophomore with bright eyes and a nervous energy, showed her how to work the espresso machine. "Some of the old-timers can be tough," Elena whispered. "Just keep your head down." Across the room, two veteran employees, Tommy and Rachel, laughed at a private joke, their voices tinged with the kind of confidence that comes from years on the job. Jessica's first customer was a young woman in a rain-soaked jacket, juggling a laptop and a phone. "Large oat milk latte, extra hot," she said, barely looking up. Jessica fumbled with the register, her fingers stiff with nerves. Mike swooped in, correcting her before she could finish. "You're slowing down the line," he hissed. Elena shot her an apologetic look. By mid-morning, Jessica had settled into the rhythm: pour, steam, serve, repeat. But beneath the surface, she sensed tension. The veteran staff stuck together, trading shifts and inside jokes, while newer hires like Elena and herself were left to pick up the slack. When a mistake happened, they spilled drink, a wrong order, it was always the newbies who took the blame. The turning point came just after 10 a.m. A man in a threadbare coat stepped inside, shivering from the cold. He approached the counter, voice barely above a whisper. "Could I get a cup of hot water, please?" Mike was at the register. He didn't even look up. "We're not a shelter," he snapped. "If you're not buying, you need to leave." The man's shoulders slumped. Elena glanced at Jessica, her eyes pleading. When Mike turned away, Elena quickly filled a cup and handed it to the man, her voice gentle. "Here you go, sir. Stay warm." Mike saw the exchange and exploded. "Elena, what did I just say? We have rules for a reason. If you can't follow them, maybe you don't belong here." The room went silent. Jessica felt a surge of anger, but she kept her face neutral. She watched as Elena blinked back tears, her hands trembling as she wiped down the counter. During a break, Jessica sat with Elena in the cramped staff room. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Elena shrugged. "It's always like this. Mike cares about numbers, not people. I just wanted to help." She hesitated, then added, "A lot of us feel the same way. We try to be kind, but it's hard when you get yelled at for it." Jessica listened, her heart heavy. She asked about the other staff. "Do you ever talk to Mike about how you feel?" Elena shook her head. "He doesn't listen. Last month, I suggested we do a pay-it-forward board. Customers could buy a coffee for someone in need. He said it was a waste of time." She looked down. "Sometimes I think about quitting." Jessica nodded, her mind racing. She spent the rest of the day watching, listening, absorbing every detail. She noticed how Mike favored Tommy and Rachel, giving them the best shifts and letting them take longer breaks. New hires were left with the closing duties, the worst weekend hours, and the blame for anything that went wrong. When customers complained about cold coffee or slow service, Mike smoothed things over with charm, but behind the scenes, he vented his frustration on the staff. At the end of her shift, Jessica walked home through the drizzle, her thoughts swirling. She thought about the company she'd built, the mission statement painted on every wall. Brew United, coffee for all. She remembered her own first days as a barista. The pride she'd felt in making someone's morning a little brighter. Where had that spirit gone? That night, Jessica sat at her kitchen table, jotting notes in a battered notebook. She wrote down everything she'd seen, the cliques, the favoritism, the fear. She wrote about Elena's kindness, about the man who just needed a cup of hot water, about the way Mike's rules had squeezed the humanity out of the place. She thought about all the customers who'd left without a smile, all the employees who'd gone home feeling small. But she also saw hope. She saw it in Elena's quiet courage, in the way a few customers thanked her for their coffee, in the nervous laughter of the new hires as they tried to fit in. Jessica knew change wouldn't be easy. It never was. But she also knew that the heart of Brew United was still beating, just waiting for someone to listen. As she closed her notebook, Jessica made a promise to herself. She would come back tomorrow, and the next day, and as many days as it took. She would listen, she would learn, and when the time was right, she would remind everyone, Mike, Elena, Tommy, Rachel, and every customer who walked through those doors, what Brew United was really about. Because sometimes, the only way to fix something broken is to see it up close, to feel the cracks with your own hands, and to remember why you built it in the first place. And as the rain pattered against her window and the city lights flickered in the distance, Jessica Nguyen, CEO barista, and undercover boss, knew her real work was just beginning. Jessica Nguyen's second day at Brew United's Seattle store began with a drizzle of rain and a line of customers stretching nearly 30 feet out the door. The city was waking up. And so was the little coffee shop on the corner, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. Jessica still, Jenny, to everyone here felt the familiar anxiety of a new hire as she clocked in. But she was determined to see the truth of her company through the eyes of its most vulnerable employees. Mike, the shift manager, barely acknowledged her as she slipped behind the counter. He barked orders at Tommy and Rachel, the veteran baristas, while Elena and another new girl, Brianna, hustled to keep up with the morning rush. Jessica watched as the old guard moved with an easy confidence, taking the best tips and the friendliest customers. The newer staff were left with the grumpy regulars and the toughest tasks, scrubbing the floors, cleaning the restrooms, and running endless errands. Jessica's first customer was a young mother with a toddler clinging to her leg. "Can I get a small hot chocolate with oat milk, please?" she asked, her voice tired. Jessica smiled, careful to get every detail right. As she handed over the cup, the mother's eyes lit up. "Thank you?" "Most people roll their eyes when I ask for oat milk." Jessica's heart ached. Was this really the bar for kindness now? As the morning wore on, Jessica noticed the divide between staff growing sharper. Tommy and Rachel flirted with each other, sharing inside jokes and rolling their eyes at Elena's mistakes. When Elena accidentally spilled a latte, Mike snapped, "Come on, Elena, we don't have time for this. Jenny, help her clean it up." Jessica knelt beside Elena, whispering, "Don't let them get to you. Everyone messes up." Elena offered a grateful smile, but her hands still shook as she wiped the counter. The tension in the shop reached a breaking point around 10:30 a.m. A man in a battered coat and worn-out sneakers stepped inside, his shoulders hunched against the cold. He approached the register, voice barely audible. "Could I get a cup of hot water, please?" Mike, standing at the register, didn't even look up. "Sorry, we're busy. You'll have to leave if you're not buying." The man hesitated, eyes dropping to the floor. Elena, watching from the espresso machine, bit her lip. When Mike turned away, she quietly filled a cup and handed it to the man. "Here you go, sir. Stay warm out there." Mike spun around, face red. "Elena, what did I just say? We have rules for a reason. If you can't follow them, maybe you don't belong here." The shop fell silent. Customers glanced up from their laptops, sensing the tension. Jessica felt her fists clench. She wanted to defend Elena, but she forced herself to stay in character. During her break, Jessica found Elena sitting alone at a table in the back, staring at her phone. "You okay?" Jessica asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Elena shrugged. "I just wanted to help. My mom used to say, if you can't do something kind, what's the point? But Mike, he only cares about sales and speed. I get it, but it's not why I wanted to work here." Jessica nodded, her own memories of working the counter flooding back. "What about the others?" she asked. "Do they feel the same?" Elena hesitated. "Brianna does. She's new like you. But Tommy and Rachel, they're Mike's favorites. They get the best shifts, the best tips. If you're not in their group, you're on your own." Jessica listened, her mind racing. She needed to know more. Over the next few hours, she made a point of talking to every employee she could. Brianna confided, "I tried to suggest a new pastry for the menu, but Mike shot me down. Said we don't have time for rookie ideas." Tommy, on the other hand, boasted about how Mike always let him leave early if he wanted. "Perks of being the best, I guess," he said with a smirk. Rachel was more guarded, but Jessica caught her grumbling to Tommy about newbies slowing us down. When Jessica asked if she liked working here, Rachel shrugged. "It pays the bills. But it used to be more fun before all these new rules and quotas." Jessica also paid attention to the customers. She overheard a woman at the window whisper to her friend, "This place used to be so friendly. Now it just feels cold." Another regular, an older man with a cane, struggled to get someone's attention for a refill. Jessica hurried over, refilled his cup, and asked how his day was going. He smiled, surprised. "Not many people ask anymore," he said. "Thank you, dear." By the end of her shift, Jessica had a notebook full of observations. She saw how Mike's favoritism bred resentment, how new ideas were crushed before they could bloom, and how the culture of Brew United had become one of survival, not community. She also saw flashes of hope: Elena's quiet kindness, Brianna's creativity, even the way Tommy and Rachel worked together when the rush got tough. After closing, Mike called a quick meeting. "Listen up," he barked. "We need to pick up the pace. Sales are down, and corporate's breathing down my neck. If you can't keep up, you won't last long here. Got it?" No one spoke. Jessica watched the faces around her, some defiant, some resigned, all tired. Walking home in the rain, Jessica felt the weight of what she'd witnessed. She thought about the mission statement she'd written years ago. Brew United, coffee for all. She realized how far they'd strayed from that promise. But she also knew that change was possible. She'd seen it in Elena's eyes, in the grateful smile of the man with the hot water, in the quiet determination of Brianna. That night, Jessica sat at her kitchen table, reviewing her notes. She wrote down every detail, every injustice, every act of kindness, every missed opportunity. She knew the next step would be hard. She'd have to confront Mike, challenge the old guard, and give the new hires a voice. But she was ready. As the city lights flickered outside her window, Jessica made a promise to herself and to every employee who had ever felt invisible. Brew United would be a place where kindness mattered, where every customer and every barista felt seen. And she would do whatever it took to make that promise real. Because sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to listen, to really listen, and to have the courage to change. And Jessica Nguyen, undercover boss, was ready for the challenge. Jessica Nguyen's third day undercover at Brew United's Seattle store began before sunrise, with a gray drizzle streaking the windows and the city still half asleep. she arrived early, hoping to catch the team before the morning rush. The staff room was cramped, the air thick with the scent of burnt coffee and damp jackets. Elena and Brianna were already there, quietly prepping pastries and restocking cups. Tommy and Rachel sauntered in last, laughing at a private joke, while Mike, the shift manager, barked out the day's assignments with his usual clipped impatience. Jessica, still, Jenny, to everyone, could feel the tension in the air. The divide between the old guard and the new hires had sharpened since her arrival. Tommy and Rachel claimed the best stations and the friendliest customers, while Elena and Brianna were left with the hardest jobs and the most difficult regulars. Jessica herself was mostly ignored by the veterans, but she didn't mind. She was here to observe, to listen, and to find the cracks in the system. The first sign of trouble came just after 7:30 a.m. A regular, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who always ordered a small black coffee and a blueberry scone, struggled to reach the counter. Elena hurried over to help, but Mike intercepted her. "Let Tommy handle the register. You stick to the floor," he snapped. Elena hesitated, then nodded, her shoulders slumping. Jessica watched as Tommy rang up Mrs. Patterson's order, barely glancing at her as she fumbled for change. When she dropped a quarter, Tommy sighed loudly. "Take your time, ma'am," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Mrs. Patterson flushed, mumbling an apology. Jessica stepped in, picking up the coin and handing it to her with a gentle smile. "No rush at all, Mrs. Patterson. We're happy to have you here." The older woman's eyes brightened, and for a moment the tension eased. But the mood soured again when a group of high school students came in, laughing and jostling each other as they ordered a round of fraps. Rachel rolled her eyes, muttering to Tommy about kids these days. She deliberately messed up one of their orders, then blamed Brianna for the mistake. Brianna apologized, cheeks burning, while Rachel smirked and walked away. During her break, Jessica sat with Elena and Brianna in the back room. "Does this happen a lot?" she asked quietly. Elena nodded. "All the time. If you're not part of their group, you get blamed for everything. Mike doesn't care as long as Tommy and Rachel are happy." "He's happy," Brianna added. "I tried to talk to Mike about a new drink idea, but he shot me down. Said I should focus on the basics until I'd earned my stripes." Jessica listened, her frustration mounting. She'd built Brew United on the idea that every employee had a voice, that kindness and creativity mattered as much as efficiency. But here, those values had been buried under layers of favoritism and fear. Later that afternoon, Jessica decided to dig deeper. She struck up conversations with customers, asking about their experiences. One woman, a nurse on her lunch break, confided, "I used to love coming here. The staff was so friendly. Now it feels cold, like they're just going through the motions." Another customer, a college student, mentioned how she'd stopped coming as often because the baristas seemed too busy to care. Jessica took note of every comment, every complaint. She watched as Mike continued to favor Tommy and Rachel, giving them the easiest shifts and the biggest tips. She saw how Elena and Brianna were left to close the store, clean up after everyone else, and absorb the brunt of customer complaints. But she also saw moments of hope. When a delivery driver slipped on the wet floor, Elena rushed to help him up, offering a free coffee and a warm smile. When a mother came in with a crying toddler, Brianna quietly brought over a cookie and a coloring sheet. These small acts of kindness reminded Jessica of why she'd started Brew United in the first place. That evening, after the store closed, Jessica lingered in the staff room. She pulled out her notebook, reviewing her observations. The pattern was clear: a toxic culture had taken root, one that rewarded conformity and punished compassion. But she also saw the seeds of change in Elena's courage, in Brianna's creativity, in the quiet resilience of the newer staff, determined to get to the bottom of things. Jessica scheduled one-on-one conversations with each employee over the next 2 days. She listened as they shared their frustrations, their hopes, their ideas for making the store better. She learned that several staff members had tried to suggest improvements in the past, only to be dismissed or ignored by Mike. She heard stories of favoritism, of unfair scheduling, of new hires quitting after just a few weeks because they felt unwelcome. Jessica also spoke with customers, gathering feedback on everything from the quality of the coffee to the friendliness of the staff. She learned that many regulars had noticed the change in atmosphere, and some had even stopped coming because they no longer felt valued. Armed with this information, Jessica began to formulate a plan. She knew that real change would require more than just new policies or training sessions. It would require a fundamental shift in the way the store operated. A return to the values that had made Brew United special in the first place. On her last undercover day, Jessica witnessed one final incident that crystallized everything she'd learned. A homeless man entered the store, quietly asking if there were any leftover pastries at the end of the day. Mike, seeing him, immediately told him to leave. "We're not a soup kitchen," he snapped. Elena hesitated, then slipped the man a bag with a muffin and a cup of coffee. Mike exploded, threatening to write her up for breaking protocol. Jessica had seen enough. That night, she sat in her apartment, reviewing her notes and preparing for the reveal. She felt a mix of anger and hope, anger at how far her company had strayed from its mission. Hope that with the right leadership, things could change. As she closed her notebook, Jessica made a promise to Elena, to Brianna, to every employee who had ever felt invisible. Things would be different. Brew United would become a place where kindness mattered, where every voice was heard, where customers and staff alike felt valued. The next morning, Jessica arrived at the store not as Jenny, the part-time barista, but as herself, CEO, founder, and leader. She was ready to pull back the curtain, to confront the problems head-on, and to remind everyone why Brew United existed in the first place. Because sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to face it with open eyes, an open heart, and the courage to change. And Jessica Nguyen was ready for whatever came next. Jessica Nguyen stood in the back room of Brew United's Seattle store, her heart pounding with anticipation. For a week she'd lived as Jenny, the rookie barista, blending into the background and seeing the best and worst of her company through the eyes of its most vulnerable employees. Now, it was time to reveal the truth. She'd spent the night before reviewing every note she'd scribbled on coffee-stained napkins, moments of kindness, flashes of hope, but also the favoritism, the silencing of new ideas. The way Mike, the shift manager, had turned the store into his own fiefdom. Jessica knew this moment would set the tone for Brew United's future. She wanted every word to count. The next morning, she arrived early, this time not in faded jeans and a hoodie, but in a crisp navy suit and polished shoes. Her hair was neatly tied back, her CEO badge clipped to her lapel. She waited until the whole team had gathered for the pre-shift meeting. Mike was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, smirking. Tommy and Rachel, the old guard, whispered in the corner. Elena and Brianna stood off to the side, eyes wary but hopeful. "Good morning, everyone," Jessica said, her voice calm but commanding. "Before we open, I have something important to share." Mike rolled his eyes. "Who are you?" Jessica smiled, removing her glasses. "I'm Jessica Nguyen. I'm the founder and CEO of Brew United." The room fell silent. Tommy's jaw dropped. Rachel's eyes widened. Elena and Brianna exchanged stunned glances. Mike's face turned pale. Jessica continued, her gaze steady. "For the past week, I've been working here undercover as Jenny. I wanted to see firsthand what it's like to be part of this team. I wanted to know if Brew United still lives up to its mission, coffee for all." She paused, letting her words settle. "What I saw was both inspiring and heartbreaking. I saw acts of kindness, Elena. You gave a cup of water to someone in need, even when it meant risking your job. Brianna, you went out of your way to help a struggling customer. But I also saw favoritism, bullying, and a culture where new ideas are crushed and compassion is punished. Jessica turned to Mike. You've created an environment where only a few voices matter, and where following the rules has become more important than doing what's right. That ends today. Mike tried to defend himself. I was just following company policy. We have quotas to meet. Jessica cut him off. Company policy does not mean turning away people in need, or shutting down new ideas. It means treating every customer and every employee with respect. If you can't do that, you can't work here. She looked at the rest of the staff. From today forward, Brew United will be different. We're starting a new program called Coffee with Kindness. Every Friday, anyone who needs a hot drink can get one, no questions asked. We're launching an anonymous feedback system for staff and customers. And every employee will have a voice in how this store is run. Jessica turned to Elena and Brianna. You two showed courage and compassion. I'm promoting you both to shift leads, and I want you to help train new hires on what it means to serve with heart. She faced Tommy and Rachel. You're both talented, but you need to remember what it means to be part of a team. If you can't support these changes, you're free to find another job. Finally, Jessica addressed Mike. You're being transferred out of this store, effective immediately. We'll review your future with the company after further training. The staff was stunned. Elena's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief. Brianna smiled, hope flickering across her face. Tommy and Rachel looked chastened, realizing the old rules no longer applied. Jessica gathered everyone in a circle. We're going to rebuild this place together. I want your ideas. I want your honesty. And I want you to know that kindness is not a weakness, it's our greatest strength. The day that followed was unlike any other. Customers noticed the change immediately. Elena greeted every guest with a genuine smile. Brianna introduced the Pay It Forward board, and within hours, customers were buying drinks for strangers. Even Tommy and Rachel, given a second chance, began to soften, helping Elena and Brianna during the lunch rush and apologizing for past behavior. That evening, as the last customer left and the lights dimmed, Jessica gathered the team for one final meeting. She thanked each person by name, celebrating their small victories and encouraging them to keep pushing for better. She reminded them that Brew United was more than a coffee shop, it was a community. As Jessica left the store, the rain had finally stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. She knew the work wasn't done. Changing a culture took time, patience, and courage. But she'd seen what was possible when people were given the chance to care. She posted a message on the company's social media that night, sharing the story of her undercover week. She invited customers to visit, to share their own stories of kindness, and to help make Brew United a place where everyone belonged. And as the comments and messages poured in, Jessica realized that this was just the beginning. The real comeback wasn't about profits or reviews, it was about people. About listening. About daring to do the right thing, even when it was hard. Because sometimes the bravest thing a leader can do is step off the pedestal, roll up their sleeves, and remember what it feels like to serve. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. The first Monday after Jessica Nguyen's undercover reveal, Brew United's Seattle store felt like a place reborn. The morning sun spilled through the oversized windows, catching on the polished espresso machines and the Coffee with Kindness board now standing proudly near the entrance. Gone was the heavy air of suspicion and favoritism. In its place was a cautious, hopeful energy, as if everyone was waiting to see if real change could last. Jessica arrived early, her blazer crisp, her stride purposeful but approachable. She greeted every team member by name, pausing to check in on Elena and Brianna, now shift leads who were already prepping pastries and coaching two nervous new hires. Even Tommy and Rachel, once the store's untouchables, had softened. Their jokes less biting, their teamwork more genuine. The old cliques had started to dissolve, replaced by a sense of shared responsibility. Throughout the morning, Jessica walked the floor. Not as a distant executive but as a present, listening leader. She chatted with customers, took orders at the register, and even jumped in to help when the line stretched nearly 20 feet out the door. She made a point of celebrating small wins, a perfectly poured latte, a customer's compliment, a moment of teamwork between staff who'd once barely spoken. The Coffee with Kindness program was already making waves. Every Friday, customers could prepay for drinks for anyone in need. Elena and Brianna kept the board stocked with cheerful notes, "Have a cup on me! You matter!" And the community responded. Stories of strangers buying coffee for each other spread on social media. And local news even ran a segment on Brew United's comeback, highlighting how a simple act of generosity could ripple outward. Jessica also rolled out regular training sessions focused on empathy, communication, and creative problem-solving. These weren't just about customer service, they were about rebuilding trust and giving everyone a voice. Staff shared their stories, brainstormed new menu ideas, and even role-played tough customer scenarios. For the first time in a long while, laughter echoed from the back room. Of course, not every day was perfect. Old habits took time to break. There were still moments of tension and occasional eye roll from Rachel, a sigh from Tommy when asked to close. But Jessica addressed these moments head-on, reminding the team that accountability was part of respect. She encouraged honest feedback, and when mistakes happened, she focused on solutions, not blame. As weeks turned into months, the transformation was undeniable. Customer satisfaction soared. Reviews on Yelp and Google shifted from complaints to praise, with regulars and newcomers alike commenting on the warmth and genuine care they felt. Employee turnover plummeted. Even Mike, the former manager, reached out to thank Jessica for the chance to reflect and grow after his transfer and retraining. One afternoon, a regular customering nurse finishing a long night shift approached Jessica at the counter. "I just want to say, this place feels different. The staff seem happy, and I always leave with a smile. It's like Brew United is back." Jessica smiled, pride swelling in her chest. "It's because of this team. We're building something better together." The Seattle store soon became the model for the entire chain. Other managers visited to observe the changes, and Jessica shared her experience in company-wide meetings, encouraging every location to adopt the Coffee with Kindness philosophy. She launched an internal newsletter, highlighting stories of compassion, creativity, and teamwork from stores across the country. Brew United's comeback wasn't just about profits, it was about purpose. Jessica made sure every employee knew their work mattered, that their ideas and kindness were the true secret ingredients. She continued to walk the floor, listen to stories, and celebrate every act of courage and care. On a rainy Friday evening, as Jessica locked up, she paused to look around the quiet, clean store. Elena and Brianna waved goodbye, their laughter echoing down the street. The Coffee with Kindness board was nearly empty, every note claimed, every cup paid forward. Jessica felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come full circle, from barista to CEO, from outsider to leader, from observer to change maker. She knew the journey wasn't over. Change was a process, not a destination. But with every cup of coffee served with kindness, every smile exchanged, and every voice heard, Brew United was proving that business could be both successful and compassionate. As Jessica stepped out into the cool Seattle night, she looked back at the glowing sign and thought of every employee, every customer, every small act of courage that had brought them here. The real comeback, she realized, was about people, about listening, about daring to do the right thing, even when it was hard. Because sometimes the bravest thing a leader can do is step off the pedestal, roll up their sleeves, and remember what it feels like to serve. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. Now it's your turn. Have you ever experienced a moment at work where someone stood up for what's right, Or maybe you witnessed real kindness that changed the atmosphere? Maybe you've been the undercover boss, in your own way, or you've seen a coworker make a difference when no one else would. We want to hear your story. Drop your experience in the comments below, and let's start a conversation. Your stories matter. Whether it's something big or small, sharing these moments helps remind us all that empathy, fairness, and courage can truly transform a workplace and maybe even someone's life. If you've ever worked in a coffee shop, restaurant, retail, or any job where you saw someone go above and beyond, tell us about it. What did you learn? How did it make you feel? Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with friends who believe in the power of kindness and change. Let's build a community where everyone's voice is heard and every story inspires. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to read your stories below.